In 1975, the world's largest democracy was plunged into 21 months of constitutional darkness. No elections, no freedom of press, no right to protest. Amidst this chaos, the youngest son of India's first and only female prime minister began a failed experiment. 8.3 million sterilizations in 1 year. This story is about the time the Indian government forcefully sterilized the poor, the marginalized, and the powerless, all in the name of progress. This is about what was eventually dubbed the Nasbandi Yojna.
Population control is not new in India. It's been a part of national policy since the early 1950s, and India is still the only country in the world where contraceptive facilities are so widely available.
भाइयों और बहनों, राष्ट्रपति जी ने आपातकाल की घोषणा की है। इससे आतंकित होने का कोई कारण नहीं है।
हमारा मुल्क चाहता क्या है? हमारा मुल्क चाहता है कि हम शांतिपूर्वक रहें, अपना काम करें, अपने मुल्क को बढ़ाएं, और हम साथ में ये भी चाहते हैं कि जो हमारे साथ में मुल्क हैं वो भी शांतिपूर्वक रहें, वो भी अपना ही काम करें।
It's been alleged that there was widespread compulsion. If there was compulsion at all, for the purposes of argument, what would be your reaction to compulsory sterilization?
I express myself in government statements as well as privately that I'm not for compulsion.
Records from the time, from the Chief Secretary of the government of Uttar Pradesh. Government attach highest importance to achievement of family planning targets. Failure to achieve monthly target will result in stoppage of salary, suspension and severest penalties. Other states, all eligible cases for sterilization in my office and department have been sterilized. Persons who have refused to get themselves sterilized have not been paid their salaries. The evidence surely, Mrs. Gandhi, that a combination of intimidation, coercion, economic sanction, not giving people licenses, not giving people rights to free education and health and so on, were used by officials throughout India to force people, in effect, to have sterilization.
Yes, they were.
Those are major, wide-scale excesses then, aren't they?
No, I don't think so.
On the 25th of June, 1975, Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency. The official reason, internal disturbance. The real reason, a court had just ruled her 1971 election invalid. It's estimated that during the course of the emergency, over 100,000 opposition leaders, activists, and journalists were detained without trial under the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, better known as MISA. MISA allowed the government to imprison anyone without charges or trial, even without the courts being able to intervene. It was supposed to be about national security. In reality, it was a legalized tool for crushing dissent. If that sounds familiar, it should. Critics point to the UAPA, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, as a modern-day version of the same strategy. Broad powers, vague definitions, and months of jail time before any trial begins. Think of it like India's version of the Patriots Act, but with even fewer checks. It's the reason Umar Khalid, at least at the time of making this, nearly 5 years after his arrest, is still in jail without having stood trial. The emergency would last 21 months and become one of India's most controversial political chapters. At the heart of this specific page, her second-born, Sanjay Gandhi. Sanjay Gandhi wasn't elected, he wasn't in parliament, and yet, during the emergency, he became the unelected architect of India's fate. At 29 years young, Sanjay had dreams of transforming India, fast, forcefully, and without the red tape. He pushed what came to be known as the 5-point program. This included literacy, tree planting, anti-dowry, eradication of caste, and family planning. That last one would become a point of national trauma. In cities like Delhi and Bombay, slums were growing at 5 to 7% a year. Food inflation hovered around 20%. Infant mortality was over 130 per 1,000 births. Malthusian fears gripped policymakers. The solution to some was simple: reduce the birth rate and do it fast. Family planning wasn't new. India had been pushing it since 1952. But under Sanjay, it turned from persuasion to coercion. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare Annual Report 1976-77 estimates that over 8.3 million sterilizations were conducted, tripling that of the previous year. In some districts, quotas were handed out like war rations. Police and revenue officers were ordered to meet targets, so they did. The everyday population was being targeted. Bus drivers, teachers, shopkeepers, even students were being sterilized, sometimes without consent, oftentimes without anesthesia. Doctors were paid 5 to 10 rupees per procedure. Recipients were offered 12 to 25 as incentive. Adjusted for inflation, it comes to these figures. While men were the focus of the quotas, hundreds of thousands of women, mostly poor and rural, were herded into makeshift clinics for tubectomies. These weren't clean hospital procedures. Many were performed in unsanitary tents, abandoned school buildings, or open fields with barely trained staff. According to a 1978 study published by Economic and Political Weekly, the use of rusted scalpels, dirty linen, and absence of proper antiseptics led to hundreds of infections and deaths. In Bihar and Madhya Pradesh, reports emerged of entire villages of women being rounded up. Some didn't survive the surgeries. Others suffered from lifelong complications, internal bleeding, organ damage, and infertility trauma. In this grand experiment of enforced modernity, they virtually became disposable. But nowhere did this policy collide with people more violently than at Turkmen Gate. The area was and still is home to a majority Muslim population. Here, thousands were evicted in the name of urban beautification. Homes bulldozed and demolished. When residents resisted, police opened fire. On April 18, 1976, at least 20 people were killed. The sterilization vans were parked right next to bulldozers. Not only did you lose your reproductive rights, you also lost your house. In March 1977, Indira Gandhi lifted the emergency and called for elections. Her party, the Indian National Congress, was decimated. Out of 542 seats, Congress won just 153. This was civil revenge. Ballots for bandages. The Shah Commission, set up in 1977, investigated the emergency excesses. It concluded that coercion was used in sterilization drives and held Sanjay Gandhi morally responsible. Yet no one was ever prosecuted. No reparations, not even an apology. Soon after, Sanjay Gandhi died in a plane crash at 33. To some, this marked a tragic end. To others, karmic closure. The campaign didn't start off with the intent of forceful sterilizations. It was the result of a variety of factors. Several state governments were overly enthusiastic about the prospect of class-based eugenics. Recent war with Pakistan, food shortages, inflation, and societal unease laid the perfect foundation for political instability. Efforts to address economic and food crises caused in part by overpopulation were coordinated on the world stage. The World Bank gave India the largest amount of international aid specific to sterilization programs at $66 million from 1972 to 1980. International pressure, particularly from Western countries, was intense. US President Lyndon B. Johnson denied food aid to India in 1965, a time of critical food shortage, until it agreed to incentivize sterilization. And eventually, they did. The fear of unchecked power additionally motivated government officials to keep the state happy. On multiple occasions, the government raised the state targets for sterilization if the region was performing well. This graph shows the number of surgeries performed over the state targets for the first year of the initiative. Today, the Nasbandi campaign still sends shivers down spines. It's why family planning efforts in India remain sensitive, especially amongst the poor. What the campaign achieved was the opposite of its claimed intent. Not only are people less open to the idea of sterilization, but for the most part, they're actively against it. Some semblance of democracy returned in 1977, fragile but breathing. Trust, however, takes far longer to rebuild than it does to build. If there's a lesson here, it's this. Power without accountability breeds suffering, and progress begins not with silence, but with truth, and perhaps a long overdue apology.